Good morning. I'm privileged to be able to join all of us this morning. I have John Seabury, the CEO of Missouri Realtors, to be able to be with us, to be able to talk about some important issues that affects all of us. And so, welcome. I'm Kenny Hubble with Bev & Co. and welcome to Breakfast with Bev. So, over the last year, we've been struggling, both owners of properties and tenants, as far as losing jobs, losing rental income, and that sort of thing. There's been a lot of relief that's been able to come our way in the form of both government assistance on the national level as well as the state level. And there was a big announcement that happened in the middle of February that the governor actually passed and signed into law House Bill 16, which actually gives some assistance to landlords. And so I asked John to be able to join us. John's the CEO of Missouri Realtors, and we do a lot of advocacy for all of Missourians to be able to do that. That's one of the focuses that we have as the Missouri Realtors and on behalf of all homeowners. And so this is very pertinent for us to be able to share some information about how we can actually help the landlords, in this case, as far as owners, as well as renters. So John, tell us a little bit about the backstory, about what's happened with the COVID relief and the different things that have passed, if you could.
I'm happy to. It's actually an exciting topic for me and something that I love to talk about. By the way, I wore my Realtor Party shirt today, so you'll know we are focused on advocacy at Missouri Realtors. But it has been very frustrating since last March, April, because so much of the assistance went towards just the tenant. Now, obviously, we want tenants to be able to stay in their property, and oftentimes many of us may own some of that property, and we didn't think Congress or federal bureaucrats were quite getting the message, because oftentimes they believe that we only have to take care of the renter because the renter's paying some huge conglomerate somewhere, when in fact a majority of all rentals in the United States are owned by mom and pops. So we had to get that message across, and I believe the federal government finally has that message, but there are still frustrating things. And I know there are so many eviction moratoriums. Fannie Freddie has one, HUD. There is the CDC eviction moratorium that's just been extended through the end of March. And those are frustrating for those of us who maybe own property and those of you out there that do own property and are landlords. So fast forward, after all of this relief has been out there for just renters, we now have some pretty amazing relief for landlords and property owners. So the federal government, the U.S. Congress, passed a bill in December, and it gave Treasury a great amount of funds that they can then administer to the states. So in Missouri, our state House and Senate worked through House Bill 16, got it passed, and it includes relief that's about $350 million, and now landlords are eligible for this relief. So it's really exciting that now the landlord can get up to 6 months of rent in arrears. And we've argued all along that you can't just help the renter, because if you give the renter money, they may or may not pay their rent. Right. There needs to be some connection between the renter and the landlord. So this is a really great program, because now the state of Missouri can run its own program. Now, it is interesting to know, what I'm talking about in this $350 million is really good for those in our area here in mid-Missouri. Other parts of the state, Kansas City and St. Louis, may not be able to participate in this program because large metropolitan areas got money directly from the Treasury Department. This is for all those areas that didn't, because they're not a large enough MSA to get money directly from Treasury. So now the landlord does have access to this. And for all the realtors who are watching, I would encourage them to go to our website, MissouriRealtor.org. We have a COVID resources page, and this is one of the top things on our COVID resources page that we update quite often. And it has links directly to the state program where they can get assistance.
Right, and we're going to be able to attach that to the video as far as that way everybody knows. So it was very important as far as this emergency relief for the landlords to be able to make that happen. And so the link for them to be able to do is on the COVID relief section.
It is on our COVID resources page. Yeah, it's near the top. We alternate these things because some days we're getting calls from members that are frustrated with the MREC and they just need to know contact information. So we might move that up on the COVID page. Right now we have information on realtors as essential workers and how that puts them in the queue for vaccines, as well as this landlord assistance at the top of our COVID resources page.
Yeah, so John's talking about a lot of resources for realtors, but we want to make sure that we're focusing on you guys, the property owners and the renters, as far as being able to know that there's actual programs out there that can provide for you assistance if you've had any kind of impact that's happened regarding being job related, about have some time off because of COVID and that sort of thing. So I want to thank you, John, for being able to join us this morning to be able to talk about that. I know there's a lot of different programs out there and a lot of different avenues, and so if people want to be able to know that, they can sure reach out, be able to talk to us here at Bev & Co. We'll be able to provide you some assistance to get you the right connections to be able to make that happen. And so again, John, thank you so much for joining us this morning to be able to talk about this, because it was exciting stuff as far as being able to know that the state actually was able to pass and get the resources down that the government, that the national kind of passed.
It was time.
Along with that aspect, why we have you here just a little bit, as far as I know that Missouri Realtors, our focus is being able to dedicated on the American Dream, right? Mm-hmm. And so the American Dream is home ownership, as far as being able to do that. And so a lot of the process, we're talking about tenants, and we help tenants along the way, because that is the part of everybody's dream is to be able to do home ownership. So we're helping those tenants along the way to be able to kind of get some assistance with this emergency relief if they need it because of the COVID. But also, what's going on as far as that is on the agenda right now, because I know that we're in the middle of session as far as on the state level, as far as advocacy is concerned. Right. Share with us just a little bit about what's the focus of Missouri Realtors on at state level this year.
Sure, we have a lot of things happening at both the state level and the federal level that we're lobbying for right now. And your point is very important, because we don't really care where you are on the housing ladder. There is a place for you, whether it's rental with the dream of owning, that's important. And we want to make sure that there are always resources, but also regulations that help that. So we're very focused in the state legislature on regulations right now that will help renters and homeowners. A couple of things in particular, we are working on some license law that is nothing terribly sexy this session. Last session was a little sexier because COVID was new for us and we needed new ways of doing business. So we worked really hard to get the remote online notary passed, so that the property owner could be at home comfortably signing documents versus coming out to your office or you going to them, and just reduce the number of interactions. So that was really great, and we were able to get that passed last session with a lot of industry partners. I would say right now the thing I'm personally most focused on are ways that we can increase inventory in our markets, because inventory is an issue everywhere in the country. So I had a call from our senior U.S. Senator last week, Senator Roy Blunt, and he asked me what I thought we needed more than anything. And I said, I believe maybe a first-time home buyer tax credit could be the kind of thing that spurs more builders to build and renters to buy, and sort of getting that ball rolling, because until we have more inventory, we're in a really tough place. So that's probably my biggest advocacy focus right now.
And I know there's a lot of things that we deal with on a local level and state level. There was a big initiative that we did back in 2010 to be able to prevent transfer taxes in the state of Missouri. There's a lot of states that have transfer taxes. And I think there's something going on at the state level right now as far as being able to try to work on making sure that the recording fees are taken care of. Is that accurate?
That is. That's something that we work on constantly. It's one of those, anytime we can reduce the price of housing, so what what you, the buyer, are going to have to pay. So the transfer tax is a big thing. In fact, and recording fees are right up there with that. Anything that adds a large chunk at closing just puts more and more families out of reach of home ownership. If you increase what they have to output, I believe it's for every $1,000 extra at closing, there are maybe 1,000 families that can't afford that could have otherwise. So everything that we're working on to reduce regulations and decrease costs are helpful for the renter and the buyer.
And along that same lines, that kind of goes back to what John was talking about regarding inventory level. As we keep the fees down associated with new construction, builder's fees, recording fees, as far as once property's closed, it helps you keep that price down, and it lets builders be able to build new houses, it lets sellers be able to sell houses, and buyers being able to have affordability on the process. So, John, once again, I want to thank you for joining us this morning. It's been very informative, and we'll be able to pass along the information. And so until next week, this has been Breakfast with Bev. Thank you.